Welcome back to Network Africa. Now, the latest report from the United Nations on sexual exploitation and abuse, that's SEA, released on Friday, March the 4th, includes new measures to improve and protect people from SEA and to hold member states accountable when cases of rape and sexual abuse arise in countries where peacekeeping missions are based. The latest report from the United Nations on SEA explains that more measures will be taken in order to keep such incidents from recurring in the future.
For the first time, will contain detailed annexes outlining the nature of the allegation, the number of victims per allegation, the number of perpetrators per allegation. It will also identify the countries from which such perpetrators came for the first time. A member state does not complete an investigation within, say, a long time period of even 1 year. Then consideration needs to be given to whether we should continue to deploy peacekeepers from that country.
Now, based on the various sexual assault allegations which we've been hearing about peacekeeping troops and similar allegations, I had to speak with a clinical psychologist, Dr. Charles Ume, about what drives a person to commit such acts. And here's what he had to say.
One thing everybody must understand about sexual assault is that there is always a psychological need to be satisfied. Though it looks obvious, for instance, in rape, that the person wants sexual gratification. That is the obvious thing. But now, studies are showing that there are a lot of psychological need people always try to satisfy when they rape or sexually molest someone. And that is where we look at the circumstances and the person's psychological makeup as at the point in which the act was committed. Now, there's no two persons that will tell you exactly the same thing as the cause of their raping somebody. Now, we've itemized a lot of factors that could actually predispose someone to rape. And you know, if you look at definition of rape, is the major thing there is consent. So when we are dealing with children, anybody below 18 can never give consent by law.
Yes.
So any sexual contact with such a person, whether penetration or molestation, is obviously rape. So we are not looking at that. And we know there are people, for the fact that they have a condition we call pedophilia. Okay? So the attraction for sexual gratification is children. So obviously that one is a disorder on its own. Then let's look at the other ones. For adults, why would an adult want to rape somebody? Now there are what we consider the power factor, the control factor, the anger factor.
Yes.
These are issues depending on the individual we're looking at. Now when we talk about the anger rape, now people are frustrated by so many things. For instance, you could have a female in an office who is a boss, and this female is frustrating you, and you can't aggress towards this female. You internalize it. Peradventure, you run into somebody that looks like her. That vengeance comes in. What am I going to do to get at this person? So, to vent your frustration, okay, you project into that person.
Yes.
And raping that person means now you have control. You could see the psychological need there.
Now, speaking of the psychological aspects of this, I know that for certain that rape has psychological effects not only on the victims but also on the rapists themselves or alleged rapists. Like, for instance, the individual we saw with the British Airways situation that took his life 11 days before he was scheduled to be on trial. Could you tell us more about the effects on the victims and on the rapists?
On the rapists. Now, if you look at the victims, they bear the brunt more. Okay? Because the rapist is only trying to gratify himself or to satisfy a psychological need, which the person cannot actually get through the normal or approved processes. Now let's look at for the victim. That is where the impact is felt more.
Clinical psychologist Dr. Charles Ume. Now, it's been more than 10 days since President Yoweri Museveni of Uganda won the elections for the 5th time in a row. However, Uganda's Supreme Court is hearing a case brought by the opposition presidential candidates, that's Amama Mbabazi, to demand a recount of votes in some areas following allegations that the February 18 election was rigged to give President Museveni victory.
According to former Prime Minister Amama Mbabazi's lawyer, the delays in getting ballot material to constituencies, which delayed the voting process for hours in some places, improper supervision of voting and voter bribery had all tainted the results.
In accordance with the law, on the voting day, or even prior to the voting day, many people were found with pre-ticked ballot papers and they were ballot stuffing. So we think that act, which was widespread across the country, led to a substantial effect negatively against other presidential candidates, because basically those who were pre-ticking were doing so in favor of the person who has been declared as a winner.
Opposition candidate Kizza Besigye, who won 35% of the vote but has dismissed the tally as fraudulent, missed Tuesday's deadline, with officials from his party saying Besigye's repeated detentions had made it impossible to mount a challenge.
The constitutional and democratic processes have been hijacked. The NRM regime, led by candidate Museveni, through misuse of the army and police, has broken into our party headquarters offices several times, laid siege on our premises, harassed our leaders and staff, arrested over 300 party members, most of them polling agents countrywide, arrested our presidential candidate, Colonel Dr. Kizza Besigye, 9 times in 11 days, denied him entry and exit from his own residence, denied him free access to his lawyers, and persistently blocked him from coming to the party headquarters and therefore free access to the party leadership.
Well, Joshua Poro, who is a Ugandan journalist, joins us right now from the country on Network Africa. Joshua, thank you very much for your time on Network Africa.
Truly, you're welcome.
Thank you. What is the latest regarding this court hearing by Mr. Mbabazi that was initiated by Mr. Mbabazi?
Well, of course, the case is in the Supreme Court of Uganda, and it's being heard by 9 justices of the Supreme Court, being led by Chief Justice Bart Katurebe. However, the case has been adjourned to the 14th of March. That is going to be a Monday, when they will actually resume the hearing of a case. Today, they had a hearing of the case, of course, to rule out some administrative issues or issues to which they can agree. The lawyers of the different parties can agree amongst themselves, and then the contentious issues can be taken to court. Amama Mbabazi did have an amendment of the petition that he presented to the Supreme Court. However, the Chief Justice Bart Katurebe, who is also the lead judge in this case, did say that the Supreme Court judges did not have time for such amendments of the petition. But later on, of course, he did accept, because so many people, that is, you can call the majority of Ugandans, are quietly in for this kind of petition.
Joshua, this is actually not the first time that Uganda elections have been said to not necessarily be free and fair, and also rejected by the opposition. So how do you reckon things might play out differently from what we saw back in 2011?
Cynthia, I do not expect anything to be played or anything to play out differently in this year, because the same things that occurred in 2011 have again occurred in 2016. Let's look at ballot stuffing. Let's look at pre-ticked ballot papers. Let's look at people being manhandled by the state. I should call them misuse of state machinery. Look at Dr. Kizza Besigye. He has been detained at his residence. He cannot have access to his lawyers or anybody. It's just a repeat of events. There is nothing new in this entire process. So I cannot expect anything different to occur. During the election day, social media was completely turned off. Actually, we did not have Twitter, Facebook, and WhatsApp for 3 days. And in exception of those who are tech savvy and they could actually use VPN networks, that is, of course, the virtual private networks, in that Uganda had a record download of over 3.5 million downloads in just 3 days of the VPN. Ugandans started making money downtown, and people are opening shops and says free VPN download and installation. That is how bad things have become. But of course, still in the petition, the president denies that nothing that is outside the law did happen within his knowledge. Maybe unless he didn't know about it, and he said he's a legitimately elected president of the Republic of Uganda. We don't expect that to change. It has been happening over the last 30 years. And you remember that when he came to power in 1986, he did say that the problem of Africa is leaders who overstay in power. But now he has added another clause on it, saying that the problem of Africa is leaders who overstay in power without being elected. We should not forget that in 1980, he went to the bush to fight as a liberator after losing an election to Sam Kutesa in 1980, the former UN president, who is the current Minister of Foreign Affairs in Uganda.
Well,
So,
you
to some
definitely
extent,
remember that incident, Joshua.
that President Museveni does not believe in the elections.
Well said. Joshua, thank you so much for your updates. We appreciate your time. Thank you so much for joining us on Network Africa. Now, we'll take a break in just a moment. We'll look at what's happening regarding the votes being counted in Benin Republic. Stay with us.